Right. Good evening. My name is Chris Engel, and on behalf of my partners and co-founders, Lacey Price, Kanan Stevens, and Michael Strong, we welcome you to Day 4, the grand finale of the 2022 Liberation of Education Virtual Conference. I'm sure that each and every one of you have a reason why you're here. Maybe you know there's a better way. Maybe your child is struggling. Maybe you want your child to become the best version of who he or she was meant to be. I certainly have my own inspiration for being here tonight, and I thought I might share that with you. Leonard Read, in his excellent essay, The Case for Free Market Education, says, "While one cannot know of the brilliant steps that would be taken by millions of education-conscious parents were they and not the government to have the educational responsibility, one can imagine the great variety of cooperative and private enterprises that would emerge. There would be thousands of schools, large and small, not necessarily unlike some of the ones we have now. There would be tutoring arrangements of variety and ingenuity impossible to foresee. No doubt, there would be corporate and charitably financed institutions of chain store dimensions, dispensing reading, writing, and arithmetic at bargain prices. There'd be competition, which is, of course, cooperation's most useful tool. This is my favorite part. There would be parental alertness as to what the market would have to offer. There would be a keen, active parental responsibility for their children's and their own educational growth." Mr. Read's quote is exactly why we built, from my perspective, the liberation of education. As he says again, there would be parental alertness as to what the market would have to offer. With the closeout this evening, you will have heard from approximately 40 speakers and over 20 hours of rich content with all sorts of solutions and topics. We trust that you've enjoyed the flexibility, the comfort, and the option to rewind and replay at your own pace. And it's our sincere wish that you, parents and educators, come away with 2 or 3 alternative solutions to your students' learning. We also hope that you find these alternatives to be superior to your child's current learning situation, and that you, the parent, fully realize your role as the best steward of your child's future. In just a moment, I'll introduce my partner and co-host, Michael Strong, and I'm so glad that you have all gotten the opportunity to meet Kanan and Lacey these last 4 nights. A couple of housekeeping items as we've done in the previous nights. First, take full advantage of the virtual conference. All of the previous night's recordings are in the left-hand menu under the session replay. We expect all of the videos will be fully uploaded for you before the weekend begins. And we hope that you'll carefully consider the offerings of our presenters, our researchers, and our entrepreneurs on how you can take action for the learners in your life. Stay tuned, as we'll be sending you some tools to help you take action and to make a decision about what's best for you and for your family. Second, as a reminder, once again, we don't have an agenda. This committee does not endorse all of the perspectives and solutions put forward, and we invite you to draw your own conclusions. We're pleased to provide you this diverse marketplace of ideas from which you can choose those that align with your values and worldview. Ultimately, that is the value of the liberation of education approach. Third, our speakers love interacting with you. Please ask questions and share your comments. At the end of the session, we just ask that you fill out a short survey. Let us know how we did. And we want to especially thank all of our sponsors, EdChoice, Learning Revolution, the Foundation for Economic Education, MECnet Inc., and the Socratic Experience, but especially our lead sponsor, the Focus Group. For 40 years, the Focus Group has provided capital campaigns, strategic planning, and major donor development counsel to hundreds of organizations around the United States, from local churches and K-12 schools to national campus ministries and international relief organizations. Their mission is to build the kingdom of God by helping faith-based nonprofits raise all the funds needed to carry out their own missions. If you're ready to take your organization's fundraising to the next level, they'd love to connect with you. It is now my distinct pleasure, for the last time, to introduce you to my co-host, Michael Strong. Michael is the founder of the Socratic Experience, a virtual school for children grades 3 through 12. Michael is indeed one of the most experienced designers of innovative school programs in the United States, and it's truly an honor for me to introduce Michael. Welcome to the stage, Michael.
Thank you, Chris. And of course, when you say for the last time, you mean for the last time this year.
Absolutely.
We'll do it again next year. So, no escaping like that. Never try, but I'm not.
I love it. You're right.
No, thank you, Chris. And I love that quote by Leonard Read as well. He was an amazing visionary, and that quotation is spot on. Before I go over this evening's program and our amazing speakers, I want to comment on another piece of this puzzle. Sometimes when people talk about this wonderful world of school choice, they somehow think that we need to keep the system we've got because of democracy, and often they trace that back to Thomas Jefferson. The fact is that Thomas Jefferson did, of course, believe that an educated citizenry was important, but Jefferson's vision of educating the public consisted of community-based private schools with scholarships for those families who could not afford the schools. That is, Jefferson's original vision for education in a democracy was essentially small town voucher sorts of programs where parents would pay tuition and those who couldn't pay would receive support for their tuition. The whole system we've got now has been, I would say, changed so many times. It started with Horace Mann in the mid-19th century, bringing the Prussian system in, where the state all of a sudden began controlling education through state boards of education and teacher training, and state-mandated curriculum. That was entirely alien to Jefferson's original vision. That was in no sense part of the original vision for a democratic education. And of course, one of the principal reasons for the adoption of the Prussian system in Massachusetts was to, as it were, civilize the dirty Irish. They were incredibly bigoted towards the Irish who were coming across in waves to Massachusetts, and so they wanted to impose a WASP education onto the Irish. Be that as it may, initially education was a few hours a day for a few months a year and only for a few years. It gradually got longer and bigger and more pervasive until now it's K-12 and beyond, and 9 months, sometimes more, and 6 hours and sometimes more. It's sort of morphed way beyond what it was ever imagined, even by Horace Mann. The other thing that I think was sad is that there was a movement towards school consolidation, despite the influence of the Prussian system and the expansion. As recently as 1920, there were 200,000 school districts in the United States. By the 1970s, there were only 20,000 school districts. So there was a well-intentioned movement to basically get rid of these tiny local school districts, which I think would have served local communities much better. But there was a belief in top-down bureaucracy and large efficiency. There was a whole efficiency movement that said, let's get rid of these tiny one-room schoolhouses and let's have big districts. But the problem with big districts is they're less responsive. And I actually think to this day, smaller districts tend to be more responsive to communities than our larger districts. I've consulted for hundreds of school districts across the U.S., public school districts, and generally speaking, I would say the smaller ones tend to be much more warm, friendly, personal, and as you get larger, the bureaucracy takes over. So on top of the school consolidation movement, which took us from an order of magnitude from 200,000 down to 20,000 districts, on top of that, then in the 60s, there began to be substantially more federal control of education. Prior to that, it really was principally state level control. But then there have been wave after wave of federal legislation culminating in No Child Left Behind about 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago. And I think most people here are probably not happy with how No Child Left Behind has, I would say, bureaucratized education. Now we're at a point where I think most teachers are not happy with the heavy hand of bureaucracy in the classroom. So we see that liberation of education is returning to our Jeffersonian roots, and it's time to go back to the real education for democracy. And with that little rant behind me, thank you, Laura. It looks like a fabulous book. I'm always in favor of smaller scale. I want to go over our speakers this evening. Our first keynote is John Popola, famous for his many videos. He actually got his start at MTV. So I always think people who have background in cool, can speak to the young. And John is famous for his Keynes Hayek's videos, millions of views. But now he is talking about Dad Saves America. He has a wonderful program. I'm among the many people profiled in that, where we talk about how fathers can play a role in really saving America. And it's sort of an inspiring, very positive, uplifting series on how different men view their role with their children, in their communities, and their families. And it's, I think, in an age when there's so much negativity, I think his Dad Saves America is a beautiful series. After his talk, which includes comments on male leadership and school choice and education, there will be a breakout with John where I have a conversation with John going more deeply into Dad Saves America. We also have a breakout with Chris Roberts, a home building instructor from WCS Career Academy and Skills USA, on the 3 foundation of career education. Again, I think we all need, thank you, Steve. I'm with you on that. You interrupt. You were so on point. You distracted me. I'm usually pretty good. That's okay. It was fun. But yeah, I'm not sure it was well-intentioned either. I always try to give people a benefit of the doubt. But career education, I think we all believe there's an urgent need to return to that sort of approach. Then Steve Hargadon, founder of learningrevolution.com, on winning at school. Again, Steve is one of the most experienced, most knowledgeable people in the space of alternative pathways in education. He's got the most immense library of amazing educators he's interviewed for I don't know how many decades, and he knows better than anyone kind of these alternative pathways, and as well as kind of research basis, both kind of the academic and practitioner side. So I very much look forward to listening to Steve. We then have, as our next breakout, Ryan Delk, the founder of Primer. Ryan was homeschooled himself, became a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. And as a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, one of his priorities was to create curriculum to support entrepreneurial creativity among homeschooled families or families that just want enrichment. So Primer is an amazing new software product that's received millions of dollars in capital and investment, and they're rolling out cool games and apps and systems for homeschooling families and those who want enrichment to experience creative and entrepreneurial learning at home. Then we've got breakouts, including Patty Sullivan of the Parental Rights of Florida. She's going to talk about parental rights in homeschooling. You all want to know exactly what your rights are. Patty is one of the leading experts in this. We've got Trey Goff, co-founder of Learn Arena, a new model for on-learning, paying students to learn, design for teens to get paid to learn valuable skills. Super exciting movement. We've got Walter Blakes and Nathan Cunning, School Choice Boys, where they themselves benefited from school choice and now are out there being advocates for school choice from a very personal perspective. They're engaging, funny, charismatic, really, I think our side, school choice needs more fun, entertaining, and positivity. Walter and Nathan are beautiful on that. And finally, Keisha King, the founder of the Mass Exodus Movement, and the hope we have for the next generation. Keisha will give, I'm sure, an inspiring, passionate speech on the urgency to help more kids transcend their current situations and leave public schools to find new and better alternatives. And with that, thank you again for coming, and we will see you all at John's keynote in the next session. Thanks, everybody.